In this week's edition of How To, we are going to learn how to deep fry in a saucepan on the stove. We're going to make donut holes. So it's really easy to do. It just a few different things that we need. I'll tell you what we're going to need for this. 2 cups of flour and 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Don't use this, that's baking soda. So make sure you pay attention to the label and the directions. If it says baking powder, you want to use this one, okay? And then we're going to need some salt, butter, milk, and then once we get done frying them, we're going to let them dry on a paper towel for a little bit, and then we're going to mix in a 1/3 cup of sugar. I'm going to get that ready now, and 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. So I just took the lid off, and I just need 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. Okay, and then you just put that little lid back on, and then you can put it away. Okay, and then you just mix that up, and it's going to make a nice cinnamon and sugar mixture that you're going to roll the donut holes in. Make sure you get that all mixed up. Okay? Okay, now we're going to prepare the batter. So 2 cups of flour. Remember how I showed you how to level it off so that you don't want it to be heaping. Okay, so it's got to be level. I need 2 cups. Okay. 3 tablespoons. Now be careful if it says TBSP, that's tablespoon. So that's a lot bigger than a teaspoon. Okay, so this is the smaller one is a teaspoon and the bigger one's the tablespoon. So that's really important. So 3 tablespoons of sugar. Again, you're going to make sure it's level. 1, 2, and 3. Move that out of the way. And then 1 tablespoon of the baking powder. And it has this little lip here so you can level it. So you just go in with the spoon and you grab it, you make sure it's heaping, and then you just scrape the top like that so that it's level. So that's 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Okay, and then a teaspoon of salt. I like to pour salt over the sink because in case it overflows, I don't want extra salt because I won't be able to get it out. So I'm going to go over to the sink and just get that teaspoon. Okay, so there's the teaspoon of salt. Okay, the butter and the milk is going to go in next. The first thing you want to do is mix the flour. I'll use a different. The flour, the sugar, and the baking powder. So you just want to mix that up. Okay, and then you're going to need 5 tablespoons of cold butter. So when you look at it looks like a ruler on there, and the bigger notches is the butter. So I'm going to count, see that line right there? So from the end to the first line, that's 1 tablespoon. And if you look on there, it says it. The smaller end, this is teaspoon, and it tells you if it wants a 1/4 cup, it tells you how much to put in. If the recipe calls for a 1/3 cup, it tells you how many tablespoons, and if you want 1/2 cup, it'll say 8 tablespoons. But this recipe says 5 tablespoons. So I'm going to go down here. We'll see where it says tablespoons, and those are the bigger sections. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and cut there on the line. Okay, so this part I don't need, and I'm going to use this bigger piece. Now, make sure you're careful when you take the paper off. Okay, so we want to make sure that we get all the paper off. Okay, now, there's actually a little tool that you can use to cut the butter up. This is more like a masher. I don't have a butter cutter that you would use to do that. So what I'm going to do is cut this on a plate into smaller pieces so that it'll be easier for me to mix it in, because it doesn't, the recipe specifically says cold butter. So I don't want to leave it out room temperature, and I don't want to microwave it and have melted butter like we did with the pancakes. So I'm going to cut this up because, like I said, I don't have a cutter. There's a special cutter that you can use, and you might have one in your kitchen that cuts up butter, but I don't have one here. So I'm just going to cut these up in smaller pieces to make it easier to mix in. So I'm just kind of cutting it up. It almost looks like cheese. Okay, and then I'm just going to dump that in. And just mix this in. Okay, and then we're going to add the milk. Okay, so you want, remember, 3/4 of a cup, leveled to the line. It says it right on there, 3/4, 3/4 of a cup, and we're going to mix that in. We're just going to keep mixing this until we have a nice dough, a ball of dough we want. Now, normally I would preheat the oven or get the pan ready, but I don't want the oil to be sitting on the hot and get too hot, because oil is, you know, it could be dangerous if you're not careful. If it gets too hot, it could cause a fire. You have to be very careful. So I'm going to wait to get the heat, the oil heated up after I have this done, so I can focus on this. If you have a deep fryer, though, that actually works even better, but I don't have one, so I'm going to do it this way. And plus, that's helpful too for those of you that don't have a deep fryer, to see that you can do this too without one. Okay, so it's a nice dough consistency, okay? But what I want to do is, and I've washed my hands ahead of time. Make sure you do that when you're touching food that you're going to eat. Make sure that's the first thing that you do. So I'm going to make a dough ball, or a ball of dough, however you want to call it. And I'm going to kind of what's called knead it. Did you ever see a cat when they're kind of getting ready to lay down on a blanket, and they kind of do this with their, it's called kneading. Well, it's the same thing. You do it with the dough. You should just kind of make that dough. Just mix that all together. Okay. If it gets too sticky, you can add flour to it, and that'll help it. Just like we did with the fossils in science. Okay. Once you have this nice ball of dough, you're going to break off about 1.5 tablespoons sized pieces. So remember, this is a tablespoon, so it's not that big, and then this is the 1/2 tablespoon. So when you put these two together, it's not going to be a big piece, just maybe little bite size almost, I would call them. Okay, just checking the recipe again. And yes, okay. So what we're going to do is break off a bite size. Just picture a donut hole, okay? So maybe it's about that size. And I want to roll it like this in my hands so that it's nice and smooth. There's no lumps. It doesn't look like this. I just want to show you the difference. So this is the piece I pulled off, and this is the piece that I rolled in my hand. Now, which piece looks like a donut hole? This one. So make sure you take the time when you break off the dough to roll it into a nice, smooth donut hole shaped ball, okay? And I'm going to do all of that, and in the meantime, I'm going to put 2 inches of oil into the pan. And I do have one of this, it's like a meat thermometer that I'm going to use to check. It's supposed to be around 350 degrees. So if you have a deep fryer, that's the temperature you would put it on. But if you don't, you can still check the heat, put it on like medium high, like maybe a 7. And again, you would need a parent to help you with that. And once it gets hot, we're gonna try 1 ball at a time, because we don't wanna throw them all in there and then it's not hot enough, and then they kind of, they don't fry nicely and they get soggy and they'll be ruined. So we want to try 1 as a test, and if that comes out nice and brown and it's cooked in the middle, then we can do the rest of them. If not, we'll have to raise the temperature a little bit. Okay, I'm going to make these up, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I have all the dough rolled up into donut hole shaped balls, and now I'm going to put some vegetable oil into a small fry pan. They said about 2 inches, so let's take a look. I think that's gonna take, let's see if you can see, about 2 inches of oil in the bottom. And I'm going to put it on about a 7. Or if you don't have numbers, let's see. This is not. Oh yeah, about a 7. But I don't want the large burner. I don't know if you guys can see this. But I have a large circle and a small circle. And this pan doesn't take up the whole larger circle. I need to use the smaller circle. So on here, it'll say small burner. Right here it says small burner and large burner. I want the small burner. And so I'm gonna put it on at like a 6 or 7. And then I'm going to take my thermometer and I'm going to place it in the oil to check the temperature. And it's going to register on the screen and tell me when it gets to 350. Okay? Okay, when it gets to 350, then we're going to drop 1 in as a test. You're going to fry for about 3 minutes until it's nice and brown. Then we're going to take it out and put it on a paper towel to soak up the grease. About 30 seconds, let it cool, and then it's going to get rolled in the cinnamon and sugar. And then we're going to put it in this bowl. And then they're done. Okay? So let's keep an eye on this. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So right now it's at 90 degrees. And I have to wait till it gets to 350. Okay, it's been warming up for about 10 minutes. Temperature says it's ready. So I'm going to take the donut and I'm going to drop it in. Just do one at a time. I'm going to show you what's happening. So I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes. Might turn it down just a little bit if it gets too hot. Just remember, you want it nice and golden brown on the outside, but you also want it to be cooked on the inside. You don't want it to be doughy. The oil's really hot. Remember to keep the handle on the inside. You don't want to have this spill. You should have a grown-up help you with the frying part. Yeah. So now the oil seems to be a little too hot. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit. It's nice if you have one of these little thermometers. If not, you'll just have to keep looking at it. See, right now it's looking like it's really brown. Okay? But it's only been half the time. So I'm going to take it and place it on the paper towel for about 30 seconds. And then I'm going to break it open. Now I wouldn't do that if I knew they were done. I just want to check it. And you can see that it's done. So I would just normally put it in the cinnamon and sugar and then eat it. I'd like to put it on here first because I don't want it to splatter on me. And I'm going to put, this time I'm going to put 4 in. You don't want to overcrowd your pot because then it doesn't give it a chance to cook. I'm going to stick the thermometer in and just check the temperature. I left the timer going. Yep, it's at a good temperature. It's actually a little warmer than it needs to be, so I'm going to turn it down. Just have to keep playing with your temperature. And when they're nice and golden brown, I'm going to give it another 30 seconds. I like to use the timer because in case I lose track of time, you know, how long have they been in here? Give it another 20 seconds. Okay. they're nice and golden brown. Okay. And I'm going to take them out. Put them on the paper towel for about 30 seconds and then roll them in the cinnamon and sugar. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll put the next batch in and then roll. Put the timer on. And then roll these in the cinnamon and sugar. So you just take it and just roll it in the cinnamon and sugar. You could also put them in a Ziploc bag and roll them that way. That's another easy way to do it. And then once they're covered, you put it in a separate bowl. Okay? And then by the time you get these done, the next batch will be ready to come out. Flip these over. And this is what they look like. Yummy, yummy. Okay. If it gets too hot, just turn the temperature down. If you have a thermometer or deep fryer, you can keep checking it. You want to make sure that temperature doesn't get too low or too high. Done. Take it out. Drop it on the paper towel for about 30 seconds. You can hear it sizzling. Then you're going to roll them in the cinnamon and sugar. And then you have your own donut holes. All right, that's it. Let me know how you like them.